When we come together to remember Harvey Milk, we acknowledge not just Harvey Milk, but we acknowledge the diversity of people that Harvey had around him. There are a few things that I really just loved about Harvey Milk, and of course most of us probably have seen the film Milk. Some may have also seen the documentary, The Times of Harvey Milk, and others may have even read The Mayor of Castro Street. A community leader whose central message about securing gay rights was the amazing value of coming out, of our visibility. As you heard earlier, he arrived in San Francisco around 1972. What I love about Harvey Milk is that he ran for office 3 times and lost. But he kept going, and he kept building the coalitions. And his successful election as supervisor in '77 came after the voters in San Francisco created that district system that made his base in the Castro area all that he needed to get elected and then transform the political discourse in San Francisco, and then quite clearly and sadly provided focus and purpose for our movement after his assassination just 11 months into holding public office. His story is a powerful one. His legacy of hope, of coming together, fighting together, staying together. And as he said, you got to give them hope. And so it is with this same hope that we continue on this quest for freedom of a people who can legally be discriminated against because of who we are, who are denied equal status in society but required to equally contribute. Indeed, it's an honorable quest. It's a hopeful quest. It's an honorable journey that has brought us here in solidarity and in many other places, mostly still in California. But I believe the idea and the presence of Harvey Milk and Harvey Milk Day will continue to spread. Now, some people like to speculate about what Harvey's further contribution to the movement would have been had he lived. What would he think of where we are today? He'd be 82. From what I've read and know about Milk, I think he would be very proud, and I think he would not be very patient. I know we like to come together as a group and celebrate the closeness that we have. We talk about the LGBT community, but I've tried very hard to recognize that even when I was at GLAAD, I didn't speak for a community. There are communities. The LGBT communities are as varied and diverse as society at large, and I don't think any one individual organization can speak for the vast diversity of what we find in the LGBT community. So I share this story when I travel because I think it's important for us to remember. Remember going into your favorite club, dance club, just bar, and imagine if week after week the police came in and they lined you up against a wall and they asked for your identification and they asked what you were doing there, who did you arrive with, who are you planning to leave with. If you happened to be dressed in clothes that weren't of your outward gender, you could be arrested. Nearly 43 years ago, June of 1969, after weeks of harassment, legal containment, and humiliation by law enforcement officials, something powerful took place, and I bet there's not a person in this room who doesn't know what that is. But those people gathered at the Stonewall Inn in New York City. It was a small bar. It was run by the mob. And it welcomed the most marginalized of the gay underworld at that time. Men in drag, transgender people, young gay people, poor gay people. And they fought back that night, and they fought back, and they were arrested, and they went back over the next several nights and protested again and were arrested again. They came out of the darkness of that night, and they stood there during the day and came out of the shadows, proud, during the daylight. And what had been a largely underground movement of the then called homophile organizations looking to very quietly assimilate gay people into the broader society, with Frank Kameni's 65 peaceful picketing in front of the White House, perhaps one exception, our modern movement for our rights, for our equality was born. And so we remember Harvey Milk this morning. But I think knowing what we know today, Harvey would want us to remember them too. And then over time, groups of people did begin to come together, and they began to march. The modern pride movement took shape. People got together and gathered, and they marched through the streets, sometimes without permission, and then in later times with permission. And from all the different places where I imagine folks in this room may be from that have brought you to this wonderful desert, perhaps to retire, perhaps to still work a little bit, but probably from many places across the United States, I'm guessing that in this room, there are people who were involved in those early days, who helped form those early organizations in the 70s, late 70s and 80s. In the late 70s and beyond, where I was a student at ASU, there was a group of young activists who stood proudly, formed the early organizations of gay rights, and there was this one kid with blonde, curly hair, cute kid, named Greg Carmack. And Greg, I remember seeing him in his light blue, kind of like this blue here, t-shirt that had Free Spirit. That was the name of the group. It was a Free Spirit group. You see, I didn't have the courage that they had. I wasn't yet ready to accept my own truth and stand with them as an openly gay person at that time. I actually was a bit more like Harvey, who we know didn't really publicly come out until his mid-30s. But in 1975, there was this guest opinion written by Greg Carmack in the local alternative newspaper, which as a closeted guy, I read, not just the personal ads in the back of it. I read the paper. And Greg wrote, "As busy as the gay movement at ASU keeps me, I often think of the good times I spent with a friend, the likes of whom I expect never to meet again." And he went on and shared a story of his friend who committed suicide rather than face the world as an openly gay man. But he concluded with, "We must open our eyes to the fact that it is only through actively pushing these doors open that change will come about. In states where strong gay movements exist, laws that oppress gay people are slowly being changed." That was 1975. It could be written today. You've got to give them hope. And I remember this well because I actually kept a copy of that original newspaper column these last 37 years as a reminder that I still have a lot to do. And so we remember Harvey this morning, but I think Harvey would want us to remember the Gregs and the other people, many in this room, I'm sure, who were part of that early organizing on campuses and in communities across the country. And then came a time when many people, gay men, got sick. Some had visible sores, and our lesbian sisters took care of us. And then they rightfully accepted and took on leadership roles in a community when a generation of gay leaders were dying from a disease that the president and many in our country refused to acknowledge because it was killing gay men. And in a strange way, our communities did come together from an organizational sense, and they have stayed together in very powerful ways, like never prior to that time. And so as we remember Harvey, I know Harvey would want us to remember them. The trajectory of the gay rights movement in our country has been tremendous in the last nearly 34 years since Harvey was assassinated. As I said, he'd be 82. He would be so proud, and yet he would not be patient. He'd be proud of the amazing amount of visibility and support that the LGBT community has today. The celebrities, the people in news, the people in all walks of life, in all professions, living openly and living proudly, which has led us to have the amount of tremendous support that we have. He'd be very proud that we've gone from that handful, literally a handful of openly gay elected officials in only the very gay-centric places in the United States, to having nearly 500 openly gay elected officials all across the country. And I think he'd be fighting right now to elect Tammy Baldwin, the first open lesbian, to the United States Senate in 2012 as well. He would be so proud. He would be so proud of the fact that we have marriage equality for gay couples in 6 states. 2 more states have provided that full marriage equality. They'll take effect soon. He'd be so proud because prior to 1997, there was no relationship recognition of any kind for gay people in any state in our country. He'd be proud that the United States president has affirmed the value of gay people by stating his support for marriage equality, but I tell you, he would not be patient. He would not be patient to seek and would seek that federal solution to the inequality that comes from this tremendous state-by-state advancement. He'd be proud, but he would not be patient. He'd be proud of the cultural change that has taken place in the span of 40-some years. The fact that the hearts and minds of our fellow Americans have indeed been won and will continue to be won. But he would not be patient with the politicians who haven't progressed as fast as the rest of the population, mostly because those politicians fear the backlash of a vocal, religious-based minority view that says we should discriminate, we should maintain a second-class citizen status for people who are not like them when it comes to sexual orientation and gender identity. And we know those folks can be very smart politically, but we also know, and Harvey would articulate very well, how they are morally wrong, how they are on the wrong side of history, and how they will not prevail. As we know, it was wrong for religion to be misused to justify slavery. It was wrong for religion to be misused to justify the oppression of women. It was wrong for religion to be misused to justify a prohibition on people of different races being able to get married. And it's wrong, just as wrong, for religion to be misused to justify the continued discrimination and oppression of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. And the hearts and minds of our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, and families, that's been won because of the visibility that we have as a community, because of your visibility, because of your truth, and your willingness to speak your truth. That visibility and that willingness to speak your truth has compelled those beyond our own community to stand with us like never before. It was not long ago when we didn't even have some of the most liberal politicians from the straight community standing with us. If you think back, today they are. More and more numbers are standing with us, realizing that our equality is going to happen. I don't care why they want to stand with us now, whether they're just getting on the right side of where the train is going. I don't care. They're with us now, and we should appreciate that. It's clear, it's very clear that without the growing number of straight allies, though, willing to stand with us and fight with us and speak out for us, we wouldn't be as close as we are to winning our full equality and freedom. And so, as we remember Harvey, we remember and we thank the growing number of straight allies that will help us reach full equality. Now we're at that point, as a very proud but not very patient people, that we remember Harvey Milk, we remember the dreams that he talked about, and it's time to again make that conscious determination that this fight, this quest, really is personal. It matters. Whatever you're doing, and in a room like this, you're the folks who are probably doing the most. But the reality is we can all do a little bit more. The fight is not over, but we're on the threshold of a dream. We have to remember, as we move closer and closer towards full equality, the voices of our adversaries are going to get louder. They're going to get even more shrill than they have been. They're going to get even more mean, if that's possible, than they have been. And we have to accept the fact that the destiny for equality is ours, and yet we have to fight back, and we have to speak back. I think it's a dream that even those drag queens in 1969 could not have imagined possible in just 40-some years of struggle and advancement. It's a dream I'm not sure even Harvey Milk would have imagined in 1978 when he was sworn in as a newly elected official in San Francisco. Soon, full equality and freedom will arrive. And those of us that may be fortunate enough to get to 82, Harvey was not, some of us will sit around when we're at that age, and some of the young folks who have been enjoying full equality for let's see, I do the math in my head here. That's a while for me. So maybe they've had full equality for 20 years or so. And they're going to say, hey, old man, Giuliano, what was it like back then? What really happened, way back in that 2000 time to 2000, let's say maybe even 2020? We all want to be able to say, yeah, we were there. We were visible. We were involved. We made a difference. It wasn't always easy. We won some and we're really excited and elated. And boy, we had some big defeats too. But we marched and we voted and we volunteered. We wrote checks. We wrote more checks. And then we gave credit cards. We did whatever we had to do to fund the march for our full equality. We campaigned. We spoke out when it mattered. And all that added up. And we reached full equality. And by doing so, everyone here and everyone who's been involved, we will be that hope that Harvey Milk spoke of. And I think even then, like Harvey, we will be very, very proud, but we will never be patient. I want to thank you very much for having me come down today. I look forward to spending some time at the Desert AIDS Project in the early afternoon, and it's always great to come back to Palm Springs. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Neil Giuliano.